Today's podcast is sponsored by Wendell August Forge. Crafted by artisans in Pennsylvania for nearly a century, Wendell August gifts are unique symbols of the stories, traditions, and milestones that bind us together. With free shipping on orders over $100, check out Wendell August Forge at wendellaugust.com. Experienced leadership for New Hanover County, focusing on jobs, fiscal responsibility, and community safety. Good morning. Welcome to the NHC GOP podcast. I'm Rule Sample along with Patty O'Neill talking to LeAnn Pierce, candidate for New Hanover County Commission. Good morning, LeAnn.
Good morning, Rule. Good morning, Patty.
Good morning, LeAnn. It's really good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
So we're just going to dive right into this, LeAnn. You and I have met one another in the past. We share a common love for the game of golf, and we've gone out on the golf course a couple of times, and that's a really great way to get the sense of a person. When I saw that you were running for New Hanover County Commissioner, I was interested in coming to see what you had to say, right? I knew you as a person, thought you were a great gal, wanted to see where you were at politically because I had no idea. We'd never talked about that. Saw you at an event and thought, I want to get involved in this upcoming election. Somebody I know is participating in it. And this is how I ended up working with Rule and the rest of the New Hanover County GOP Communications and Marketing volunteer group. So how is the campaign going, LeAnn? How are you getting your message out and how's it being received?
So the campaign's going well, but let me say, Rule, if you don't know, she's an excellent golfer. I was just kind of tag her. Patty's an awesome golfer, and so I love the game, but it takes forever to learn. So she's good if you haven't played her yet. But thank you for getting involved, Patty, and that's what we want is people to hear about it and get excited about the campaign and get involved, and we need more of that. But I think it's going well. We're staying busy every day. I had a couple of phone calls. Can you do something this night or this night? I'm like, I'm booked out 2 weeks. You know, I want to do everything, but it's almost impossible to get it all in. And I think that's what you have to do, which is get out there and meet everybody. And we have a huge county, and I'm trying to hit different pockets of the county.
And I think that that's great. And one of the things that our podcast does is get your message to your constituents in one easy, accessible place. So that's why we're talking to you today. The people who have not crossed paths with you through your various events are going to be able to see and hear about what you stand for today. Now, you're talking about our county. It's a very large county, all the way down to the tip of Fort Fisher Curry Beach, then all the way up as you get into Burgaw and in that area there, over to the river. So I live in South New Hanover County. And on the ballot this year is the Wave Transit tax. And Wave Transit doesn't really service that area. What is your position on that? How do you feel about that?
So I know that when I was in Carolina Beach, they do go to Carolina Beach. They do not go to Curie Beach, Fort Fisher, or Riceville Beach. So that was one of the questions I got from some of those areas is what will it do for us because we don't have any services. Well, I mean, the response to that would be you may get some funding for bike trails or multi-use paths, that kind of thing. I do think that the way transit needs to be improved. I think that we need to look at a different way to do way transit. I think that Marie Parker's doing a great job. She needs some more time to work on that system. But I think that if we're going to continue to grow, having a public transit system is a good thing. One that works for us, not one that would work in a bigger town. I've seen the ride shares, that kind of thing. And I'm all in favor of the multi-use paths and connectivity. That said, I'm not sure this is the best time for a tax on the people. Another tax. Let's just call it another tax on the people.
Right.
And I haven't, I've had some discussions with different people. In theory, I like the program, but there's no end to it. There's no sunset clause. So where does that pot of money go? And I'm always concerned about how that money is going to be spent. And I just think that with inflation and what's going on in our country right now, it's just not the right timing for that tax.
I think that that's a fantastic position, LeAnn, and I think everyone could support that. In times when we may have had no inflation, lower interest rates, and prosperity, then maybe we could overfund a little bit and give them a little bit of a leg up. But right now, families in New Hanover County are struggling with what they've got to take care of right now. even if it's a small amount, it's still an amount that has to be budgeted for families. So thank you so much for sharing that position. You want transit and you want to relieve the congestion that we have on our roads. But now's a tough time to be asking people to dig into their pockets, even if it is, a small amount. So I appreciate that. There's a lot of funding that comes in and out of New Hanover County, right? And we've seen a lot of questions asked about how it's appropriated and where they're spending it. There is conversations about the sale of the hospital. There's conversations about building new rehabilitation centers. There's conversations about a development on the West Bank. Where are you at with those sort of things?
Particularly the West Bank or the other? It was
Either one.
a lot of a large portion of the funding that goes to New Hanover County is appropriated to certain things, whether it be schools or health and human services. Of course, we have our fire and police that all have to be funded. So as far as that goes, that is something we'd have to really look at during the next budget cycle. I think that for me, I would have to get in there. I know as soon as the election is over in November, sworn in December, January, February, you'll start budget season March or April, and that'll go for the next couple of months. So that will be something, a time that we really need to get in there and look and see where that money's being spent. Now, there is several things that I think need to be looked at harder. We cannot continue to create departments with COVID money. When we create pandemic response and even, and I believe 100% the safety of our children, but when we fund that program with COVID money that's going to be gone in 5 years, you have employees that you have a debt that has to be sustained. And the only way you can do that is with tax dollars. So that will have to come from the budget. Are we going to let them go when that COVID money is gone?
Right.
I mean, I don't think that's typical government procedure. So that's a concern to me. That's a big concern, is how much debt have we created with money that's not that has an end date.
It's not sustainable. It's not going to be there, on to the end of time. If we continue to want those programs and fund those programs, those dollars are going to have to come from the residents of New Hanover County in the form of taxes, or we're going to be sending, hundreds of our fellow citizens into the unemployment line if we eliminate those positions. So,
and I think that's wrong. Yeah, for us to have, told those people, now you have a job with the county. This is how you're paying your bills and you're taking care of your family. But oh no, by the way, it's over in a couple of years. See, that's just not the right way to do things. I think I would ask for a projection from the county manager of what these departments are going to need to be funded after the COVID money is gone. So I would need to see a long-term projection of what that funding source would be and how much it is. And so, there's very little money left over in government budgets.
Right. It all gets spent. What we want to do is make certain that it's being spent wisely.
And you asked me about the West Bank. The West Bank, is very interesting. I think that for no better term, I think our county commissioners kicked the can on that for a long time. I think because it was an election year and because nobody wants to make those controversial decisions, even though they should. You do your job, make the decisions, and let the chips fall where they may. But Leland should have never had the opportunity to possibly been able to annex property in New Hanover County. That's something that's just, and I'm glad they didn't. I think if I was a county commissioner, I would have been on the phone with the mayor over there, which I know very well, and I would have had those conversations. We need some more time on this. And so I'm glad that they didn't go there. I think that would have created a lot of animosity between New Hanover and Brunswick County.
Absolutely.
We don't need that. They don't want it, and we don't want it, because we work well together. I know a lot of the elected officials in Brunswick County, and they're great people, and that's what we need to continue to do, is work together. But that said, I think that there can be some development there. I'll tell you, I recently went, and the name is going right over the top of my head, of course, but I went to a city down in South Carolina, passed through it, and they had industrial across the river, just like we do. But what was built there was industrial facility. It was warehouses and things like that. And it was ugly. I'll just be honest with you.
Sure.
I didn't like the look of that. So I'm not in favor of industrial across the river, because that just kills the view. Now, do I want a skyscraper? No. Can we do something in between? Maybe. I think that we can. I think that we can balance some kind of mixed use across the river within reason, that will create jobs and be very eye-catching, with also the preservation that is going on or wants to happen over there with Eagle Island. And I think we can have both. I would like to see both happen. Down in Carolina Beach, I was a big advocate for the preservation of Freeman Park, which we did in a growing community like Carolina Beach. But you have to balance that development with open space. And so I am in favor of that preservation attempt that's going on there. I would like to get more involved with that. But also there's private property rights, which is what's going on with the development. And then they have the right to develop. But we have to tell them what we want to see. What is that zoning restriction going to be across the river? So we haven't done that. We need to have community meetings. We need to get the public involved. We need to get all the stakeholders at the table and say, what do we want there? Do we want to leave it industrial? I heard somebody say, well, if you leave it a certain way, you can't dictate what kind of business goes there. Any kind of business that buys that property within those zoning rights can do what they want to do there. Right. And that's how it should be. But we have to put whatever restrictions we want on those properties and zone them how we want and how the community wants to see it. But we haven't done that. And I think that's where they dropped the ball.
So you think the method to do that is through public hearings to get some feedback from the residents of New Hanover County?
You should always get the feedback of the public. I know there's a lot of people against it. There's a lot of people that are actually for it. And then I think the answer lies somewhere in between. I think that the people who have the property under contract or own the property have the right to not lose their investment in that property. Sure. So where's that middle ground? So I think that's what we have to find. And I have found over the years there is middle ground, and you can make people come together and work together.
Well, as we're talking about property in New Hanover County, there's a couple of things that come to mind. A few years ago, we had one of these situations, once again, of a piece of property that was zoned a particular way, the property of Echo Farms Golf Course, right? It was zoned for residential development. It was not zoned as open space. And so when the developer, the owner of the property, decided that they were going to turn it into a residential development, there was really not much that the residents of Echo Farms neighborhoods could do about it. So what I see happening in South New Hanover County, especially with River Lights, the situation with Echo Farms, and then the closing of the Snowcuts Bridge Park, is that open space for the residents of Southern New Hanover County is continuing to shrink. And I think that there is a large population of families that are moving into that end of our county. It's oftentimes more affordable than it is up towards Wrightsville Beach, Mayfair, Kings Grant, that area. How do you feel about setting aside more open space for Southern New Hanover County? And do you have any feedback on the Snowcuts Bridge property, the park that was closed a couple of years ago because of land erosion? I would rather see money spent to shore up that park and make that a viable recreational piece of property than a lot of money spent on the West Bank at this moment in time.
Right. So let me just start out by saying I grew up in rural Pender County. So I'm an advocate of the outdoors, of the coastal environment, of the rivers and the just outside. And I think that's important for our children to have areas to be outside and our families to be together and do activities. So I'm all in favor of parks and open space. We have to balance that. So I agree with what you're saying, and that's why I do like the idea of Battle Park is finally, after, 20, 30 years, something's going to happen there. It's 42 acres. I think they're going to do 6 acres interior, and woods will surround it. And I like that. I think that's a good thing for what's happening over in New Hanover County on the southern end. I was recently in Tarrant Woods, and that's a huge development as well, all the houses that are going there. And I think that we need to have some connectivity into those neighborhoods so they don't have to go out onto Carolina Beach Road to get into the park. So we find ways to connect that. So that's one example. And it's funny we started talking about golf, but golf courses are hard to maintain. They're hard to
they are.
It's hard to keep up. So that's what happened at Echo Farms. Same thing that happened down at the Cape. So exactly the same thing. And I know that the people there were a little bit upset about that. But again, he owned the property, so I get that. So I would like to encourage those people to set aside some space for open space to do that.
Right. I'd like to see New Hanover County actively pursue buying some of that with their budget, their commitment to open space. If you've got these landowners that do want to, and there was a compromise at Echo Farms that created some recreational facilities, but I would really love to see us taking care of the property that we have versus trying to spend money creating this mega complex on the west side of the river that's going to spoil the view for those who are sitting at the George or the Pilot House or Elijah's or any of those places. I had the pleasure of seeing a sunset down there right before Hurricane Ian came in. And it's magnificent to see that expanse, right? So I appreciate your answers in regards to park development and things of that nature. What else do you think is important for the residents of New Hanover County that we've not talked about, LeAnn?
Well, if before we move on, if you don't mind, I would. It's my understanding. I was going to address your question about the park down at Snow's Cut.
Oh, yes, please.
I think that was that is actually owned by the Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
So we were offered. I think New Hanover County was offered to look at that park, but it was my understanding it was very expensive, and it's a very unsafe area right now. But I would like to see some estimates on what it would cost to shore that up. I don't know. It's a huge drop off right there. So that is something I think that we could look at. It's all about what it costs. So I think that we could look at that. I would like to. I haven't requested this yet because I'm not elected yet. But when I get elected, after I ask for a projection of the sustainability of those programs, I'd also like to see a list of property owned by New Hanover County. There's all the property we don't know about. I learned that. I'd like to see what properties New Hanover County does own, and are we looking forward, path forward at more parks, particularly on the northern end of the county as well. That's going to be developed. Blue Clay Road, Castle Hayne out there.
Right, exactly. They're putting houses all over the place up there. That's
true. Preserve. If you don't plan for preservation, it won't happen. So
you're exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it reminds me of the time when you had to really be an advocate for the sand reclamation project for Carolina Beach, because the government had cut the funding with like zero forewarning, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they cut our funding like they did just us. They cut everybody's, and Carolina Beach was the first to expire. And I had very good relationships, and I got to give Congressman Rouser a shout out. I've known David for 10 or 12 years, and I called him and I said, "Hey, where's our money?" You know,
right.
And it's good when you can have that kind of relationship. I know he looked at his phone and said, "Oh, dang, I know what she's calling me for." He answered, but he answered. I said, "David, where's our money? Come on, he said, LeAnn, I'm working on it. You just continue." Path forward with your plans and specs, because if it comes in at the last minute, you have to be ready. So, we're told to wait. It's going to take another year. You're not going to get your money, this year. And I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to go with what I know. And he knows what's going on in Washington, D.C. So we continued with the plans and specs with the Army Corps. If we had not had those in place, we would have never got our beach renourishment.
Right. You were ready to move as soon as the funds were released. And if you had not gotten those spent, they would have expired. And
that's right. And even if we got the money, if we had the plans, we could still not have.
You couldn't align the work that needed to be done. And I think about the beaches, and Snow's Cut is kind of part and parcel of the same thing. If we could get some preservation, not only for the beaches, but also for the area of Snow's Cut, maybe that would alleviate a little bit of the pain that it would take to get that park back to where it's safe and there's a walkway and whatever the case may be. So it's a good recreational area for the families.
And when I was in Carolina Beach Road the other night at Terran Woods, someone asked me, like at Rifle Beach, they have a multi-use path that goes all the way to the beach where people can ride their bikes and go down to the beach, which is pretty interesting. We don't have that, and I haven't thought about that, but I think that's a possibility. It's very interesting. Can we look at having some kind of multi-use trail or path so people can go to the beach on their bikes instead of driving? So I think
LeAnn Pierce here on the NHC GOP podcast. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to address one issue before we go. Is that the number one issue, other than the economy, across all of our races is public safety. And we've just got a couple minutes left in our podcast. What are your thoughts on the status of public safety here in New Hanover County, and how are you going to address issues going forward on that?
So I will tell you this, public safety is always our number one concern, public health and safety. And I will always be an advocate of that and one who will put money towards our police and our fire. None of us want to call 911 and find out that we can't get a fire truck or we can't get a police officer when we're in trouble. So I think that's going to be very, very essential moving forward. I think we have to be tough on crime. I'm not a person who is not. I'm a sympathetic person when I need to be, and very unsympathetic when I don't need to be. So if you break the law, you need to be punished for that.
LeAnn Pierce, running for County Commission here in New Hanover County. How can people get in touch with you and ask you more questions and support your campaign?
So my website is LeAnnPierce.com, LeAnnPierce.com. You can contact me there, send me an email. My cell phone number is 910-520-5921. Out and about all the time. I have several meet and greets this week. Wednesday night, we have the forum with WHQR. That'll be at Cape Fear Community College. I expect that in conjunction with WCT, so I expect that to be a very good forum for people to get more informed about their county commissioner candidates.
All the best to you, LeAnn. Thank you for being here with us.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for doing this.